Yeah. Very good afternoon to everyone. I'm Vipul Shukla, and I shall be a moderator for this session. My role here shall be impartial, facilitative, and just to guide you through the process. Uh, Having said that, I would like to invite the calling party to begin with their opening statements.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Mr. Moderator. And first of all, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this negotiation session. My name is Rhythm Kataria, and I'm the attorney on behalf of my client, DataFest Limited, who is represented by Mr. Leo Yin. Mr. Yin, who is accompanying me here today, is the current Chief Executive Officer of DataFest Limited and has been serving the company since its inception. At the very outset, I would like to take this opportunity to thank both of you, both Mr. R.S. Bahuguna and the council on his behalf, for agreeing to resolve the impending dispute through the negotiation process. And I appreciate both of you taking your time out to attend this session amidst the health crisis that we are all going through. I hope you're all keeping safe and healthy. All thanks to the technology these days that enables us to, solve and resolve a dispute in a virtual setting. Having said that, I'd like to clarify my capacity here. As an attorney, I am only in an advisory role, and I shall be dealing with the technicalities, the semantics of the proposals that we lay here on the table today. The power to accept or reject an offer wholly or fully or partly shall wholly rest on my client, and he shall be in the position to accept and enforce any agreement that we reach here. Under normal circumstances, at this stage, I would have presented a non-disclosure agreement to my learned friend on the opposition side, Ms. Counsel. However, given the situation and in the interest of time, I have requested my secretary to mail the same to you, and so that we can obtain your client's digital signature on the same. You can peruse the same, the provisions of the same thoroughly on the email and revert me with the document duly signed. Before we approach the dispute at hand, let's build a framework and set some ground rules so that there is the constructive and conducive dialogue between both the parties. In order to reach an effective solution which is beneficial for both of us and takes into consideration both of our needs and interests, there'll be a need to gather and share some information at different intervals during this entirety of the session, which will involve posing questions to your client about the various details so that we can formulate an offer which is workable solution for both of us. It goes without saying that we shall restrict ourselves from speaking over and in between each other in order to formulate a conducive conversation. Lastly, it is important that we discuss every agenda individually and moreover only one at a time so that there is clarity on the offer proposed by both the parties, which will eventually lead us to a better resolution. Moving towards an effective resolution, I believe there is a need to address what my client is aggrieved with and what are the ground realities that led us to where we are today. It is my client who is in the best position to lay bare the facts, and for that, I'd like him to take this forward. Mr. Yin, why don't you take it forward from here?
Thank you, Ratan. Thank you. But I won't take up much time in this negotiation session. I am sure we have far more important things to discuss. But before we go ahead and chip in our observations, I think there are a few words that I would like to say and then move on. I think, Mr. Bahuguna, ever since we have started operations within this country of Rizad in 2015 under the supervision of Mr. Prime Minister, who had promised to globalize and incentivize foreign investments, we had planned to explore and expand within this country and directly democratize the process of social media to its youngsters. I think it's evident from over the past 5 years of our functioning here that we have expanded and helped in every other manner that we can. It is evident that over the past 2 years, we will now become the second largest non-governmental employer within this country. And more importantly, what I think is the most important thing in this discussion is the love and appreciation that the individuals or the users who use this application have for this, for the company and the services we provide. The amount of time they spend is a direct seal, or the fact that they are absolutely in love with the application that we have developed and the service we provide. Given that, there is one thing that it's absolutely necessary to be heard. The idea that the moment that we heard the news that we were banned from this country, specifically after us being, compliant with every other law that was possible or every other thing we were asked to do, despite the fact that we were in all, in compliance with every law and we had been banned from the government, we were not given an opportunity by the government to address the concerns or the grievances that the government had. We think that this unilateral decision has been absolutely heart aching for us, and we think that we might come to a solution towards the end of this discussion where we are able to understand the concerns of the government and address the same in the best possible manner. I hope, with that being said, it's absolutely necessary for us to make it clear that we have not lost any faith in the government of Rizal and the rationality that the government of Razad possesses. We think that this is absolutely evident by the fact that we have decided right now to not pursue any any legal proceedings against the government. We think that this is our way of explaining that we are trying to comply in as many positions and as many capacities to make it a far more successful negotiation for both of us. I think with that said, it's important if Rhythm has something to add to, or I just hope that towards the end we are able to reach more mutually beneficial agreement in the first place. Thank you. Over to
Thank
Rhythm.
you. Thank you for that elaborate statement, Mr. Yin. I would now request Honorable Minister Mr. R.S. Bahuguna and his attorney, if you could now just briefly give your introduction and the capacity that you're in here, so that we, as the calling party, can set the agenda and quickly move towards negotiation. Also, just one small request: if you could clarify if you have the authority and capacity to enter into or enforce any agreement that we will reach here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rhythm, if that's okay, if I might address you as Mr. Rhythm. Thank you for such a brief and warm welcome. Warm greetings for the day from both my client as well from my side. I do understand that we all are located at different time zones, but we have accommodated to each other's different time zones, and we're here to listen to each other, work in a collaborative manner. As far as the issue at hand is concerned here today, I do believe that there are a lot of things which need to be discussed. I'm really glad that we have adapted to the changing times, to the pandemic situation, and use Zoom as a platform to discuss and deliberate. As much as Mr. Rhythm brought forward here today the need for the non-disclosure agreement, as the counsel on behalf of my client, I'd also like to put forward that my client represents the government of Razad. As much as confidentiality is important for your party, we also feel that the aspect of confidentiality is very important in general and in specific to today's session. And we do believe that whatever was being stated and whatever was being discussed here would not be discussed elsewhere outside. And even if we do plan to release a public statement to the effect as to what has been discussed and what has been concluded out of today's session, I think it would only be with the consent of both parties. Having said that, before passing on the baton to my client, I'd like to draw out a few concerns. The primary concern being that the aspect of trust. A relationship is purely based on the aspect of trust. However, I think there has been a strained relation between both the parties, and we look to probably discuss and deliberate on the same. We do believe that privacy is the key to Razad, and it's the fundamental law of the land. I do understand that there have been strained relationship between the two countries, and it was only out of the reason that I'm sorry, Mr. Lin, if I may address you as Mr. Leo, sorry, if that's okay throughout the session with Mr. Rhythm. At some points, if I may directly address your client, if that's fine with you.
Certainly, the communication as a whole can go through me. However, if there's certain query that you would like to address to my client by Mr. R.S. Bahuguna or you can address the same. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As reassuring as you guys have quite a few questions on the table here today, my client and I also do have a few questions, and I think that will steer the process towards a good conversation, a meaningful conversation, which is going to benefit both the parties here today. I do recognize that both parties have different interests on the table here today, and the primary interest of my party being with respect to the discussion over the threat to the national integrity of the state. The sovereignty has been a threat, and that has been the main reason for the ban. However, having said that, I would like to place on record that we are here with an open mind. Before passing on the baton to my client to take over, I'd just like to state that my capacity here would be to advise my client on all the legalities that would revolve around the issue, and just merely an advisory capacity. And finally, I'd like to just say that nothing is settled unless and until everything is settled here on the table today. So please be rest assured that we're here to hear you out as equally as we expect you to hear us out. Having said that, I now request Mr. Bahuguna to say a few words.
Thank you, Council. I think both the councils have done a wonderful job of placing on record every single point that I had in my mind about this discussion. Thank you, Mr. Leo, for sending me that email to discuss this matter. I believe all decisions come out of great discussions. And I hope this will be one such productive discussion. Now, having said that, let me at the outset, your counsel had asked me whether we have the authority to settle and the complete authority to discuss all matters at hand. So let me assure you that despite my capacity being Ministry of Information and Technology, the Prime Minister has also empowered me to take decisions in other matters so that this negotiation session can be all comprehensive and not limited to just the data concerns or the privacy concerns. Having said that, Mr. Leo had pointed out that they were unhappy with the fact that the government had not provided an opportunity to be heard. Please consider this session as that opportunity. And the reason for previously not providing an opportunity was solely because it was an immediate and deep concern that was brought to us by numerous complaints, various sources which stated that there was an immediate threat to our national integrity and sovereignty. As you may understand, it is such an important factor for the government to take into consideration in such a manner that measures, despite being harsh on certain levels, have to be in consonance with our fundamental laws. And for us, if I may put on record, for Razad, the privacy is our fundamental right of our citizens, and that is of utmost importance to the government. And we did not want to falter in any manner with that. You have already seen that our government has been extremely beneficial and extremely encouraging of foreign investments, and have tried the level best to provide incentives to ensure that there is investment in the country, there's economic development, there's growth. So you can understand that such a harsh decision from our end was after numerous deliberations. I mean, if I'm not wrong, it was in January that we first had report coming out that there was a data leak from your end, and you had clarified on the same. However, we took months and we deliberated upon it, and that is how we came to the decision in June, almost 6 months later, that it was a threat that we could not at any cost ignore, and it had reached to a level where credible sources had let us know that there was such a breach. Now, that being said, I am here today to discuss and openly and get assurance from your end as to how we can have a better compliance of the privacy laws in our state. And if you had noticed our ban order as well, it clearly stated that the ban is only until the compliance is restored. So please be rest assured, we would like to continue this relationship. However, our only condition being that the privacy laws have to be completely ensured. And in that regard, I have certain questions for your client, Mr. Leo. I have certain questions that I believe you can answer best and assure me about the same. And with respect to that, I think my council has certain agendas for the meeting, and then we can set a common agenda as a whole.
Just before Mr. Rhythm lays down what exactly the other party would like to discuss, I would like to put across the proposed agenda of my client here today. However, before that, I'd like to state that we do believe that you might have some overlapping interests and some which you'd like to discuss, which might be different from our interests. So we're open to hearing you out and probably working on the prioritization of our goals as well as your goals. So our goals are of twofold. The first one is the compliance of the privacy laws of Razad. So it's a two-limb discussion that we look forward in today's session with respect to that. In that, the first limb would be with respect to the reasons actually leading to the ban as such. And secondly, in case the ban has to be lifted, there would be some preconditions that my client would put forward in today's session in case on the fulfillment of the said preconditions, the chances of lifting the ban would become better. And finally, the other discussion we'd like on was with respect to the public statement maintaining confidentiality. However, before we delve into all of this, I do believe, like I stated in the beginning, that there needs to be a sense of trust, and the relationship has to be built and the foundation has to be strong before we even delve into something else, because we do understand that there are some sore relations between the two parties here today. Having said that, I'd now request Mr. Rhythm to put forward the proposed agenda of the other side.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. We see that there are quite a bit of differences between the parties, and it will be my client's effort to address and resolve each of them. Be rest assured with that. Talking about the proposals, we have formulated a twin agenda, as you have done the same. which we think is absolutely necessary to be negotiated upon. And we shall discuss each agenda at a time. If you find the agenda to be a common ground for both of us, we shall discuss it at the first instance and then move on to the other agendas. The first agenda that we have on our hand is about lifting the ban on Booyah with immediate effect, right? If I can go into the semantics of the same, and if my client could provide me the permission with the same, uh, the first limb of that is that we want to address your concerns with respect to security of the data, and second, with respect to the economic effect that the Rezardian economy has been suffering from due to Booyah getting banned or the data fest not in operations in the country of Rezard, right? So, so we are addressing a twin agenda on your part as well. So what we are asking for is you lift the ban of Booyah in a time frame of at least 15 days from now, right? You have a 15 days time frame in which you lift the time. And what we are willing to offer you in return is, first of all, since if the ban is lifted and economic progress is held on our part, I believe the Rezardian economy is the best to benefit from that. And with respect to the slow economic growth and the employment opportunities that are scarce in the country right now, and due to the pandemic as a whole, right, we all have been suffering from a lot of employment crunch lately. I believe the best way forward is lifting our ban so that we can reinstate the employees that were laid off, and also reinstate the salary of the employees that had received a pay cut, right, of in the earlier scenario where we were operating in Rezard. Secondly, with respect to the prime concern, and I believe this is a common agenda for both of us as well, is with respect to the compliance, and is with respect to the privacy, and is with respect to the security of data, right? With respect to security of data, we would like to, like, despite giving several assurances from our part that we have complied with every kind of law that exists in the country of Rezard, I believe it is also important for us to offer you and invite you for a thorough investigation, an independent thorough investigation of our data servers and data storage facilities, so that you can check on your part, and using your intel and using your men and using your expertise, can check if there is a data leak or even a data share with the Alanian government, which you have concerns with, right? On our part, we have not done the same, but however, even addressing your concerns, we would like to invite you to check the and forensically audit and forensically investigate whole of the data servers on our part. If you'd like to add on to something, Mr. Leo.
Right. With respect to the investigation that we are planning to put forward as a proposal to the responding party, there are a few things that also need to be considered and need to be understood. Firstly, we respect that the independent research, the independent investigation that you're talking about must be carried out by an independent body, which is to say that this body does not, or this individual does not belong to either of those countries, so that we can maintain a far more democratic understanding of how this is happening. Secondly, what we've thought of is forming a body wherein all the three will have a say in it, and therefore the outcome will be determined by it. And considering the last thing that needs to be understood in it is that I think that there are certain amount of discrepancies or certain amount of unclarity on with respect to the reasons why this ban came about within the Rezardian government. This is something that I wanted to discuss upon before we finalize the independent investigation. If I could be explain the reasons why these kinds of ban came about, as the council deems fit.
Mr. Leo and Mr. Rhythm, first I'll address the offers and other concerns which have been raised by Mr. Rhythm, and then I would move on to what the pointers raised by Mr. Leo. Firstly, Mr. Rhythm, I'd like to state that I'm glad that we're almost on the same page and most of our agendas do overlap. Having said that, I think we, like you discussed before, we should take one issue at a time and deal with it. And just jumping the gun and saying to lift the ban immediately is something which I think we should keep for the later part of the discussion. And first, we should actually do a thorough research as to why the ban was actually being imposed. Having said that, like Mr. Leo had few questions as to why the ban was imposed, I think my client would answer that. In addition, my client does have a few questions, and based on the clarity and the response that Mr. Leo would provide him with, I think the conversation could move ahead.
So, Mr. Leo, would you like to ask me the questions regarding your ban first, or shall I proceed with the reasons why we imposed the ban?
Indeed. One of the few, I think these are concerns with regarding the timing of the ban to come about. I think in the way that this ban was implemented, which is right post the kind of like border discrepancy that we had between the Zarian government and the Leninian government, does not truly reflect the best intentions on part of the government, which is to say that there was a non-compliance which resulted in these kinds of bans. What this directly indicates to us is that we have been merely a pawn of some political struggle or geopolitical power struggle that has accrued out of the same. So the reason why we think that there is some amount of unclarity for us to understand what we should do better in order to gain your trust, we think it's necessary for you to identify where was this report coming from, what did this report explicitly mention, and what are your expectations from us as a company to improve so that these reports can be directly addressed to.
Excellent questions, Mr. Leo. I think to an extent I had anticipated these questions. So let me address them one by one. For sure, to an extent, the geopolitical tensions that are between our countries, your home nation, Alania, and our country, Razad, have been a factor. However, it is not the sole factor. Let me remind you that. As I mentioned in my opening statement, the major factor that led us to take this decision was the privacy concerns. And with regard to that, as you asked your second question, what were the reports? Unfortunately, this is classified information of the government, and I cannot reveal our sources as such in this discussion. But rest assured, we had looked at the credibility, we had looked at the source of the information, and after ensuring the verification of the information, that is when we decided to proceed ahead with the ban. Now, coming to the third point, which I believe is the major goal of this discussion, as to what can you as a company do to regain our trust and to get your operations back and running in our country. With that, I have a few queries actually. I'll post that first and then we can discuss as to how to move forward.
I had a question with respect to the same thing.
Sorry?
Before we move on to the same discussion, I had a bit of clarification with regards to the second question that was addressed by you. I had a bit of dubious understanding of the premise of the same. The question that was posed by me did not truly how do I say, indicate upon you to reveal the sources of the reports that we're talking about, but we're talking about what are the problems identified by these sources which made you reach to this decision.
Oh. So the problems identified by these sources was that you were taking limited yet important information and sensitive data from our clients at the time, from our citizens, your clients and our citizens from at the time of registration, which included a mandatory photo during the time of registration. Now, I understand that the app you have is a video sharing app. However, we had concerns as to why a facial recognition was so necessary at the time of registration. Now, having said that, my first question to you would be with regard to where is the data stored in all these cases, and considering the ban has already been implemented, what have you done with the data that you have stored up until now?
Just to add on to that, I also have the question as what is the purpose of collecting the information? As my client had brought out here today that the profile photo is mandatory and you have collected other data like name, age, and also with respect to age, I would like some clarity if there's any minimum age to create an account, or anybody and everybody is allowed to create an account, and what are if there are any parental controls, and what was the reason of including and taking data with respect to geographical location. So if you can just answer all of these questions for us.
Right. I think there are several things on the table to discuss right now. Let's go one by one before we reach to a conclusion on either of them. With respect to the data collection that we have addressed, that with the nitty-gritties or the necessity to collect each and every information, I'd go one by one. With respect to the existence of any parental control or any kind of minimal age, the reason is that this app basically exercises the universal mechanism which is being addressed by almost every other application, such as Facebook, Instagram, or any other corollary that you could think of. These are the similar circumstances and the similar guidelines which have been laid down. Specifically with respect to the same, the data that you're talking about in respect to photo, location, and I think there was one more query regarding why their names and these things have been taken into consideration. The reason is pretty clear. I think within this competitive market wherein every other company is striving to create far more a precise outcome for the consumer, to create and to create a far better enjoyable outcome through this application, we think that the ability to garner the location of these individuals and to adjust their feed depending upon who is nearer to them, so that they can actively understand the individuals around them and thereby connect with each other, became a necessary and one of the most pivotal factors in why we think that this application was welcomed by them. But on the same idea, I think even if we understand that there are some concerns regarding the same, that the collection of data is problematic and we should not do it in the same, we like to ask the similar questions. Why do you think that to a certain extent collection of location in and of itself is creating certain amount of threat to the same? Because what I can gather from the same is that any kind of solution which is being proposed to the same, it becomes highly inconsequential if you do not understand the utility that the respondent party is trying to address with respect to the data of the location which is being registered.
I can just just add something to my client's clarification on the same. There is one concern that was raised about the geographical location. I believe my learned friend here. Can I go
Yeah,
forward?
please.
Yeah. I believe my learned friend here, Miss Attorney, and also the Minister of Information and Technology also understand how our network works, right? How our application works. It is an application which undertakes a infinite scroll feature. What does an infinite scroll feature essentially works on is that around the location of the user, if there are other videos being shared and on the network of the user, we take that into consideration and supplement the same on the user's interface, right? And that is how our unique system of business works, I believe. So addressing that concern, I believe geographical location is quintessential to our existence, because infinite scroll is a quintessential feature of our application as a whole. So if you may, take that into consideration as well.
Yes. Mr. Yin, prior to that, I would like to say that before you post your question, you haven't answered my entire question. And the major question that I asked was, where is this data stored? And after the ban, what have you done with the data that was previously stored? So after that, only I would discuss any further questions.
I think the data has been stored in the earlier location that it was stored, as has been informed to the responding party in the country of Singapore. And I think that Rhythm can apprise you of the necessities as to what we have done during the same time.
The data has been stored there. I mean, since we've been banned, we could not collect any further amount of data from the users, and we complying with the ban. And as a fully compliant company, we've taken down our application from all the Play Store, all the applications from where users could have downloaded the application. So now there are no new registrations going forward. However, the data is being stored and has been safely protected in the country of Singapore, which has a great relationship with the country of Razad, I believe. And since a lot many years, diplomatic ties have been going forward. So I believe there should not be a concern about data location in Singapore, I believe.
Mr. Ridham, just a follow-up question to this. Like you said that the data is currently being stored at Singapore. I want to know the fact, in case if this negotiation doesn't go in the right direction and the ban is not lifted, what happens to the data that you have stored, considering that that we do not want to lift the ban? What would you do with the data in that instance? Because right now you still have stored the data, right?
If
So
I'm,
what would you do
yeah,
in that instance?
if I can, take my client's permission on this as well, and like speaking on behalf of my client, we believe the data will be deleted once and for all and would not be used for any other purposes, because we value our users' privacy at the foremost. I mean, we as the users would not even want to. We as the company would not want to go and infringe on anybody's privacy as a whole. So since if this, I believe this is not a conducive environment to say that the negotiation session will not go in a good direction. However, if it goes southwards, I believe the data will be fully destroyed, and the data of other individuals would not be stored anymore. Thank you.
Let me clarify on behalf of my counsel that she did not mean that this negotiation will definitely go southwards, but just in case, as a government, we have to take the necessary precautions.
And if I may just ask another thing, being that what was the reason that at this instance the data still being stored and wasn't deleted? Like right now, you just mentioned that the data would have been destroyed. So in that instance, also the first and primary step should have been to destroy the data. And another question to add on to that is, the company that is storing this data in the server in Singapore, who is it owned by, and where the server is actually located? Is it owned by your client? And like,
yeah
Yeah.
So if I can address both of your concerns, the first is with respect to why did we not delete the data in the first instance itself. We believed in good faith, I believe, since we did not get an opportunity of hearing from the honorable minister earlier when we were banned, we honestly believe that we would get an opportunity of hearing and we could settle our dispute there. However, since if you now say to us explicitly that this ban will not be lifted and we will be forever banned, we do not have any incentive to store the data in the first place. I hope you understand that fact. Secondly, going forward, with respect to the second thing that you asked, that if that server has been owned by my client, it is fully owned by my client, and my client is protecting the data in the country of Singapore. So you don't have to be scared about the fact that the data might be leaked or the data. We've already proposed you a thorough investigation of the same. So I believe that concern rules out everything else that you might have on your hand or on your mind about the skepticism that the data might be leaked or shared with anybody else. Thank you.
Counsel, while I understand your points with regard to us elevating our concerns, I believe that unless I ask the necessary and pertinent questions, or my counsel asks the necessary and pertinent questions, our issue will not be solved once and for all. Please understand that this is a government that I have to take care of, a citizen of 1.2 billion population. So there are absolutely, it is necessary for me to understand these points to the ultimate, so that when I go out and I make a decision in this negotiation, I have all the answers to the questions that may be posed to me, which is the sole reason why we are in this process of we need to know every information that is going to come out. Now, having said that, Mr. Leo, is there a particular reason that Singapore was chosen as the place to store this information? I fail to understand why it was not stored in Razard itself. Because if you remember our privacy laws now, though it has not become a law in itself, the bill states that all information must be stored in our country. So is there a particular reason why you chose Singapore to store the backup servers or the data servers in?
Right. So I think there are like few understanding of where the context of this debate, of this entire discussion is set. With respect to even if your entire current bill that you discuss about basically asks you to store the data within the premise, within the geographical boundaries of Razard. But at the time when this entire formation was taking place, we thought, and I think it's fair for us to assume, that the most conducive environment what we could find with respect to low cost of operation and other considerations taken into place, Singapore was the country which qualified to be the most conducive environment for us to do so. We think that one of the major problems or the major roadblocks that comes in specifically in way of new startups or technological companies is with respect to specifically the amount of cost is incurred when you undertake the operations. And we think it's far easy for us to also assume the idea that even if it's necessary for us to open up certain amount of data servers within the country of Razard, this is a discussion we would like to reserve for the late of this entire discussion. There are other concerns that we still have with regards to the same and the location of the data localization, but also on the similar idea, just to like clarify before we move ahead, we still think that Razardian infrastructure is incapable of providing a conducive environment so that data localization can happen effectively and revenue generation can at least take place. I think with the way that the infrastructure is assured, like even if we are able to shift our data servers directly to the geographical boundaries of Razard, it's highly improbable that we'll ever end up making any kinds of profits for the same. I think at the same time, this becomes a far greater roadblock for not just for us, but I think like for other companies as well, wherein they will have almost no incentive to invest in a country wherein the margins of profits is highly negligible or like minimal to begin with. If Rhythm has something to add.
If I can add something to my client's beautiful insights on of the whole business that we run as a whole, I believe there are other manifold reasons for not shifting or localizing our data in the country of Razard as well. There are multiple reasons with respect to that. I believe the first reason and foremost reason is that the cost that has been already mentioned by my client. The second and manifold reason about that is that you right now we're not, I mean, honorable minister must be solely apprised of that we are living in a digital age right now and internet governs the world right now. However, so in that particular sense, storing a data physically at any location, whether be it Singapore or whether be it Razard, should not make you feel safe that I have this data in my physical capacity. Hence, because internet servers work on these data, and if I'm using Booyah app today, the internet is traveling and taking the data of my interface to Singapore servers. I'm not going there physically to submit the data, right? So the internet era essentially involves sharing of data across boundaries. And I believe your concerns about sharing of data with Alenia in that respect is not something that we are doing, or we are engaging in sharing of data with Alenia of Resardian users. Be rest assured with that. Thank you.
Yes, as I have already stated before, it is not just the sharing of data with Alenia that we are looking at. We are looking at privacy in general. So, with regard to that, Mr. Yin had to say that the infrastructure in Razard is not capable as yet to store the information, to store the servers. As far as I understand, and Mr. Rhythm has already confirmed it, that it is internet backup servers. So, could you tell me as to how long do you think it would take for you I mean, I understand it is a proposal that you want to reserve for the future, but this is an important point at this discussion, and I would like to know from you, how long would it take for you to shift your servers from Singapore to Razard? For I believe this is one of the conditions from my government to lift the ban.
If I can
To add on to the part of the revenue, I do believe that the number of people who use your app in the country is immense, and definitely it's going to be a source of revenue for you as well. So I don't understand what is the hurdle in probably moving the servers here, considering that we already have the setup with employees working here, so they can, I guess, help out, and you guys could work on a proper solution to shift the servers.
Right. I think there are like few understandings. Let's like clear it out before we move ahead. The PDP law that have been like consistently being harped upon by the government is still not a law in the first place. It's still a bill. It's still a proposal. It still has
I
to come
think I
in.
have mentioned that already, Mr. Yin.
Right. That will continue. To flow into it. The reason why we think like it's creating an unconducive environment in the first place is that understand that these even if these are server backed up data, there is still a certain amount of physical utility which is attached to it, which is to say there has to be rooms, there has to be certain equipment so utilize them, certain amount of servers which are so complicated which have to be cut cost. On that point, there are certain considerations that the government would like, the company would like to take with respect to how many years will it take for us to shift our servers into it. I think that is still contingent upon the fact that we are even willing to do that in the first place. I think there are certain other principal discussions that had to be taken into consideration with respect to how we look towards our freedom of speech policy, how we understand the idea of privacy. With respect to the same, one question that the government has been posing consistently and we have like not been answering them is it's not just about the data which is being shared with the Iranian government, it's just about the privacy in general. I am still unsure as to what problem is being directly addressed, but giving a very brief overview or understanding how our company has absolutely no interest or incentive to engage in any kind of violation is pretty clear. I think in the market competition that we exist in, the market trust that we enjoy with respect to our users is of utmost importance. The moment the news goes out that we are exploiting their data or we are using it in a manner which compromises their privacy, we are absolutely losing out in the game. Which means at the same time, every data that we handle is a direct a direct risk to jeopardize our own business in the first place, which directly concludes the fact that we have every and all incentives to utilize this data and to and to process them in an independent manner. If there are any incentives that the government would want to point towards that the company would have in case to mishandle this data or to process this data, there are like they should be definitely addressed first place and before we move on to other questions.
If I can add one bit of information with respect to the proposal that has been forwarded by my client. I believe the most important part of not localizing the data and not localizing, like not thinking about right now localizing the data in the country of resort is also with respect to our past experiences. As you've seen, our home government itself in Alenia had passed a law, that is national security law, wherein we had to submit our data to the government as and when they required. Even they used that data to crack down on certain dissenting individuals. I believe if the same happens tomorrow, that is, for example, if in Razard tomorrow a government comes, for example, your government sees a change, and in the next election there is a new government, I believe the new government will work in the best interest of the individual. However, if there is some problem and if the government passes a law, we will be required to share the same amount of data, because we are in the jurisdiction of Razadia in the first place, and that is what we do not want to go forward with, because our users are of prime importance and our users privacy is of our prime importance, and that is why we cannot even fathom about compromising on the privacy or any kind of data sharing with the government of the day in Razadia right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo, and thank you, Mr. Rhythm, for beautifully laying out your concerns. I just want to address them back. Firstly, I want to say that I think we began the conversation by saying that there needs to be a sense of trust that the government has to impose on Mr. Leo, and we do believe that this is a move towards the same. I do believe that if Mr. Leo accepts to relocate the servers, I think the government would have more trust on the app and also the sensitive data that the app goes on to store. Having said that, I do believe the fact that I think there were quite a few questions which were raised by your client as to what we feel is being, what data of yours is being used. I do believe that since there has not been much censorship as such, which is being imposed on your app, a lot of sensitive data which is being posted by the Razari citizens is being used through the Booyah platform by the Iranian government, which has been secretly collecting such sensitive data. And this was seen as an emergent threat. And that was the reason that the ban had been imposed. If I may just ask my client to just add on to this, please.
Yes, but before that, there is something that I have to address. We have been, I mean, I understand that the company is extremely invested in its clients and ensures that they have, I mean, to their level best, they ensure that the privacy concerns are met. And you had to, I mean, in a way, allege that our government might misuse the information. I'm sorry, Mr. Counsel, but that is quite, I mean, it is not an allegation that I can take silently sitting here as a Minister of Information and Technology. You must understand that Razad is a democratic government and we are a government of the people. Therefore, whatever we do will be for the benefit of the people. Wait, Mr. Gin, I'm not yet finished. Your counsel must not have made such an allegation to the effect. And considering my counsel has already informed you as to why we believe that these questions regarding the privacy, regarding the servers have to be addressed in the first place, and why we as a government is looking forward to you shifting the servers back to Razad is so that there is no possible platform for these data breaches or data leaks in the future. We are not stating that you have already done them. We are stating that we are trying to prevent them from happening in the future, which is why we would like it to be stored in our country, followed by our own laws, and ensuring that we have complete control as us from on behalf of our citizens to ensure that their data is not being misused in any manner by any country or by any organization outside. See, if I may point out, your revenue from Booyah platform, could you please inform me as to how that is majorly informed? I would believe it is based on advertisements. And how are these advertisements being made? To an extent, it is through the, you are linking these advertisers to my citizens. So these are sensitive data that are being used, and which is why we are hoping that you will shift your platform back, the storage platform back to Razad, so that we have a better control of what happens with our citizens' data.
And just to add on, I do believe that in between of the conversation, it was brought out by either Mr. Leo or Mr. Rhythm that they're okay with having us investigate and look into all of the data and stuff, right? So I have a proposal on behalf of the government. The government would actually like to appoint a committee of 3 members. So these 3 members would be appointed by the government, that is the ministry as a whole. And primarily, they would be overseeing 3 things. First would be they would oversee the operation of Data Fest with respect to its servers, which are containing data of Razadi citizens. They would not be looking into the data of any other citizen. It's only limited to the Razadi citizens. The second thing that they would be looking into would be we'd like us to get a detailed report maybe on a quarterly basis from Data Fest, which would specify the parties actually who had the access to all the data in the previous months. And finally, be it advertisers or any stakeholder for that matter who would access that data or used it for any particular purpose. And thirdly, the committee should have investigatory powers in case there would be any misuse of the server and if it's established prima facie. So this is in event that, because we already have a ban right now, and I don't really, if this ban gets lifted, I don't think it would be a good thing for either of the parties that the ban be imposed again, because the government feels that there was a violation yet again. So to ensure that, we do feel that there's a requirement to have the power to investigate the servers, and in case there is any misuse which is being established, we should have a right to investigate on those. So if these are okay, I would like to hear from you to respond on all of these points.
Indeed. I think like there were a lot of discussion that took place in that last 5 minutes, but indeed, let's start by one. First, let's address Mr. Bahuguna's claims with regards to us accusing the government of misusing the data. Let's make it very clear. The company that is here right now is about to exist for at least next more than 30 to 40 years, or assume 50 years. The point is that every data server which is now going to move within the geographical locations of Razard is going to stay there permanently until and unless there is a forced move out. The problem that remains here is I absolutely trust the government right now that there will be absolutely no misuse taking place in any kind of situation as well. But the main paranoia on part of the company has to be addressed here. What if the government changes? We cannot at this point in time. I hope this is the kind of understanding we have from the government as well, that the power in democratic society is highly uncertain. Who comes next and what kind of decisions are taken by them is completely with respect to what kind of political situations are in there. I think we have seen sufficiently good enough democracies turning into soft authoritarian powers, wherein if not direct, absolute, outright, stamping upon freedom of speech, but softline regressive freedom of speech, getting caught is a consequence of it. The problem is that company is thinking and planning about it in the longer term. The reason still remains. We absolutely understand and trust the government at this very moment, but government also has to understand in respect to the what is better for the consumers in the longer run, that this remains with an independent country in the first place. With that question being answered, I hope it is, we move on to the second issue. The idea that there is a very universal understanding that there is privacy being breached by us, and there is some paranoia regarding that. The problem that still remains, and the question that still bugs me every time I think about it, is why was it us in the same place? We understand that to a certain extent there is certain amount of sense, like as you have already ruled out, this is not with regards to any kind of political prosecution which is happening, and I completely understand this must not be any political prosecution which is happening. But the secondary reason which was pointed out was with respect to the there is certain amount of sensitive data which is being collected, that there is advertisement which is flowing out of it. What is important and pertinent to point out here is that advertisement and collection of data is a common feature in almost every other application that runs on a human of an interface of any mobile phone, be it any as normal applications such as Facebook, Instagram, or any other corollary or analogies that I can draw. With respect to almost even the smallest of the application that exists ends up taking some of the information with regards to the individual who lives there, or individual what the location are, what their names are. We at the same time are not taking any kind of identity proof. We understand with respect to other things, but we still think that this is an arbitrary measure that we are looking forward to. If it's a general violation of privacy, why do you think it was a specific reason that we were chosen for the same, since political reasons have already been put out on the same? Lastly, with respect to the concerns regarding the committee, I think we are okay with the committee, and this is, I think, is the mutual benefit of both of us. That committee must be established, and I think that's absolutely necessary to do so. But what we think would be far fairer to not just for the government, but to set an example for the international community as well, is to include an individual and a neutral third country. It's absolutely up to the government to include whatever country they deem fit is absolutely fair, and towards the end of the day, they are absolutely able to give out us a direct judgment which is unbiased in nature. With respect to that, there is like a few hearsay which I have heard with regards to the the investigation that happened by USA and European nations, is that the investigation that was launched under the GDPR rules has definitely, to a certain extent, ruled in our favor. I won't say that this is the change. This is something that changes the landscape of this discussion, but I think that the government must take it into consideration when deciding, when and how to do so. But at the same time, the sole decision still lies wherein if the government is okay with introducing a third party, wherein all the three parties will have an equal vote to decide on what the outcome is, so that we are also assured that the government had taken the best possible alternative to address our grievances. If we
An
could
additional clarification to what my client said and what Miss Counsel also addressed was with respect to, the investigation going on, and after that, the culmination of investigation report coming out, and then the ban getting lifted. We believe it is in our immediate interest that the ban should be lifted immediately. However, the investigation could go simultaneously with the the company functioning. So that is where we do not agree on the fact that the investigation report will come out, because we have seen already in the past that the US and the GDPR nations have begun investigations and taken almost like 6 to 7 months in concluding their report. We do not want to suffer through that, because our company is already under a lot of financial hardships due to the pandemic going on, right? So we have been out of business because getting banned and a lot of stuff. I believe we would not be like taking into effect the we would want to get an immediate ban lift. Thank you.
Yes. So I just want to respond to both of you, and then my client could respond to the other pointers. Firstly, Mr. Leo, I just want to know from you. You have been throwing this jargon, freedom of speech over this conversation so many times that I fail to understand what is the ultimate meaning that you want to bring out of that fact. Because I think you have the right to freedom of speech, and that is why you're speaking and we're hearing you. Secondly, I want to clarify to Mr. Rhythm the fact that where you discussed about the report, it is not just one report that I was talking about. I clearly mentioned it's a quarterly detailed report. So this committee would function in event even after the ban is being raised. So at any point, the committee has the right to come forward and say if there is a misuse of the server. Having stated that, and coming to the part where Mr. Leo said that he had here said about a few things. Mr. Leo, I do understand that there might be rumors and there might be information that is being popping up here and there. However, I do believe that as a council representing the government and on behalf of what my client has told me, it is to be stated here that the government cannot function on merely hearsay. However, if the report comes out in the public domain and it remains in favor, it will definitely be considered. Please be rest assured about that. However, until the report comes out, I don't think there can be any assurance with respect to a report which is merely in the air at the moment. Having said that, I just want my client also to clarify further pointers that were being.
Yes. So beginning with the committee, as my counsel has already stated, the investigation committee is not merely for the lifting of the ban, as you had proposed earlier. It is for every quarterly report. So we are trying to ensure that no such situation arises in the future. That we are, I mean, you said that it was a harsh move on our part. So we are trying to ensure that there is no such ban that has to be taken place in the future once we lift this ban. And I think the discussion is going forward in that direction of lifting the ban. So that being said, yes, I do agree that we had a proposal for 3 members on the committee, which were to be from different departments of others. But I understand your concerns of having an independent member, and that is something that we could definitely consider, so that there is no doubt whatsoever about any miscommunication or misunderstanding or misjudgment, and you can be rest assured that this report is fair and true to its statements. And coming to the point about the USA reports or the GDPR under the reports under the GDPR rules, it is wonderful to hear that the report is coming out in your favor. However, nothing is official yet as yet, and until an official communication comes out, rest assured, as my counsel has already mentioned, we will be taking into consideration. And I think even before the official report comes out, we have already had this discussion. So there is not much to be considered at that point if the ban is lifted. And talking about the democratic government changes, yes, I understand your concerns. I clearly understand that you are trying to look at a long-term goal here, and which is wonderful. We are glad to see that Razat has impressed you enough to stay for 30 to 40 years ahead. And that's great to hear. And but we are also looking at our citizens' best interest. And as far as you will work for the best interest, we also have, as a government, to work for their best interest, which is why we are asking these multiple questions. I'm sorry if at any point you feel that this is way too many questions to answer, but we're just trying to be rest assured that we are doing everything in the best of our capabilities. Now, talking about, there's one more thing on the table at present. We are looking at a made in resort scheme that we are trying
Just a
to
second, if I
implement.
could agree on few things before we, like, if you could just finalize these things and then we move ahead.
Okay,
I
what
think
other
this is
things?
it is a completely new proposal that you're bringing about, and we'll
Mhm.
discuss that. But the thing is that for this negotiation to be, like, far more conclusive, there are few proposals that I've seen are absolutely necessary, and I understand they're brilliant to begin with, and I would like to agree on this. Let's seal the deal.
Mr. Leo, before you agree on the proposals, I'd just like to take a few seconds to just summarize on a few things that we've actually agreed upon. So we actually know what we've agreed upon so far, and then you can go forward and tell us what else.
Council, the agreements also depend on the contingency of the fact that my client will put forward as
I
proposals,
just
right?
want to clarify that we were on the same
Yes,
page
yes.
with
There,
respect to
that's what
setting up
that's what
of
that's what
the
he's going to clarify about
ministry,
the
right?
same, and then we can
Yeah.
move forward and conclude and summarize whatever we want to do.
Rhythm.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. Let the council address their concerns. We'll definitely put it out. Council, please.
No, I just wanted to know if we are on the same page and we've agreed to the fact that the ministry shall appoint a committee of 3 people, out of which one person would be an independent person, and we'd probably consult you as well while appointing them so that we know that there's utmost transparency and obviously the 3 functions of that. Am I right in assuming the fact that you are okay with it, or do you have further queries with respect to that, or you'd like some changes to it?
Right. I think so far there are few things. Look, we are agreeing if there is a formation of committee, the committee's composition will remain the same. We think that there is one concern that we are undoubtedly, a bit of dubious upon. We think that there are some amount of bureaucracy problems that do come in when there is a continuous quarterly report. I think it's far better if we push for a yearly report, and that way we can, have this committee based upon your recommendations, and thereby not create any kind of, bureaucratic problems. I'm not saying this is specific
I
just to you.
apologize. I did not hear the first statement that you made. Could you just repeat yourself?
Okay, all right. We understand the committee formation is absolutely necessary, and we understand it's good. The reason that way I'm trying to push forward here is that bureaucracy is something which is inevitable in almost every part of the world and every government functioning. We think that if there is unnecessary checks and mechanisms of the server in every 3 months, I think it creates certain amount of, barricades for us to function properly. We want this review to take place, but on a yearly basis, so that we are also able to accommodate the same problems. And at the same time, we are ready to accept this situation that if there is any kind of data server which is established completely after thorough investigation, we are ready to take the ban as soon as that happens. But at the same time, there are a few other discussions that will happen. So if there is, towards the end of the session, let me make it very clear. If towards the end of the session we are able to reach a conclusion that both the parties are happy with, and if committee has to be formed, this will be the composition of the committee. If I'm good with it, if final words can occur, and then we can move on to the other recommendations that the Bahuguna was presenting.
Yes, I understand your concerns about the bureaucracy part, but for the present year, I would have to say that we stick to the quarterly check. And after that, moving ahead, I mean, I'm pretty sure that you will come with flying colors in these quarterly checks. So then after that, we can proceed to half yearly or yearly as you would like. But for right now, we would have to stick to the quarterly check.
Right. This is for the first year, right? Just to confirm.
Yes, for the first year.
Thank you so much. This is absolutely beautiful if this comes out to be in the way that we have discussed. And moving on to the next discussion that Mr. Bahuguna was putting forward to.
Okay, I believe there was one more point that I think about the servers that my counsel had mentioned. If you could respond to that as well. Counsel, would you just repeat yourself for the sake of Mr. Leo?
Yeah. So, Mr. Leo, I think somewhere in between, the conversation went circles and circles, and we tried to dodge the fact about the shifting of the servers. So, we actually want to come back to it, and we want to deliberate and discuss if there is a possibility of shifting the servers, one. Secondly, another important key decision that would help us in probably coming to a conclusion on the discussion about the lifting of the ban would be, in event that the ban is being lifted, what possibly are the measures that DataFest could undertake. We believe, and there are a few things that we have in mind, which we'd like to propose. Firstly and foremost thing is we believe that a few workers, not few, quite a few workers who have been laid off already, they be reinstated, firstly. And secondly, we also expect that the wages of the rest of them be increased to a certain extent. We do believe that we're in a pandemic situation, and as much as funds is required to your company, it's required to our citizens as well to look after their living. And in such tough times, it would be a good measure for them. And I'm sure this is a way you can regain the trust of citizens, and your image also would probably prosper as well.
Right.
Also, on just before you respond to this, on this behalf, if you require any governmental support, please be rest assured to put that on the table as well.
Okay, just a sec. Just to clarify on the same things, I think there are certain understandings of the same that we are also looking forward to, and I think this will absolutely fall into the place that we are also looking for, like we were talking about. First, we'll address the question of what respect to the reinstatement of the same individuals, increment of salaries, and then we'll move on to data localization that we had discussed earlier. Firstly, to the same. One of the proposals that I was also thinking about was with respect to infusing a large capital within the domestic economy of Razard. I think that since I believe Razard is one of our favorite place to operate in, we are very willing to engage in one of the largest investments we have done so far. We'll engage in private capital raising, and we'll do everything in our ability to do the same, which at the same time comes at a trade-off that the respondent party has to make. The reason is that the investment that we are looking forward to is something that we also need a tax break for. The reason that we were able to make such amount of such amount of investments which allowed us to sustain the business. The problem is that when the business is introduced, it requires continuous expansion, wherein the revenue has to be continuously utilized in other places and therefore accommodated within the business itself. There is far less money which is left for us to utilize it as a revenue and put it in other places. So when we will be utilizing all this revenue and infusing it within the economy, we do need certain amount of tax breaks for us to do that effectively. As you have already said, you will be like compliant with respect to the wishes we want from government. This is just a mere extension of what have been happening for the past 5 years, and this will continue, and we will do so. And at the same time, we are also willing to introduce a business ombudsman with respect to the same, will directly report us what kind of things are happening. Ombudsman is basically a mediator between the government and the private entity who will directly address all the problems that we have. So therefore, with respect to the same, the establishment remains that we'll infuse extensive amount of money. We need a bit of tax breaks. I think the addressal that you're trying to talk about, reinstating a lot of individuals, we are okay with it. Every person who has left this family is still a part of it, and we are okay with doing so. With respect to increment of wages, this is still a trade-off that the respondent party has to decide, because even if we increase those wages, this still has to be cut from the money that we are infusing in the longer run. So eventually, the money still goes into the entire ecosystem, but this is something which depends upon where and how this money will be utilized. So yeah. if Rhythm has something to add on it.
If I can add something about the business ombudsman idea, that the brilliant idea that my client proposed here. The business ombudsman is generally clarifying on the fact that business ombudsman is certainly a facilitator between the government and the private entities in the country, right? And it will be, looking forward and looking over the red tapeism or the bureaucratic hurdles that may be proposed for companies' ease of doing business in the country. So that is one aspect that we would want. And secondly, the tax break that has been already mentioned. With respect to the wages, I completely agree with my client that the whole ecosystem that we are trying to create here and pump in a lot of money for the Razadian economy, there has to be the cut from that as well. Since we have a limited amount of money with us, which we can infuse, we have limited pool of resources. And if we have to divert certain pool of resources to someone else, for example, increment in the wages or something else, we would have to cut the same from our long-term investments in the economy, which is beneficial for the Razadian government and economy as a whole as well.
Yes. Thank you, Council, and thank you, Mr. Leo, for such wonderful proposals on the table. Having said that, let me just clarify first what my council meant by increment of wages. So as far as my understanding goes, you have laid off about 8,000 employees due to the ban and your operations being stopped in Razard. So you are willing to reinstate the 8,000 employees. Yes, thank you so much. And secondly, we understand that when there was a layoff, there were certain employees who were continuing under your operations, but their wages had been reduced. So what council was trying to hint at was that their wages be reinstated back to their normal levels. Is that fine by you?
Yeah, sir.
This is something that I think
All right. So after that, we were discussing about the investment, and I'm glad to see that you are willing to invest further in our economy. I mean, you have already mentioned in your opening statement as well, you're one of our biggest employers, non-government employers. So it is an investment opportunity that we are looking forward to. However, with respect to the tax breaks, I need two clarifications from you. One, at present, with your previous investment, how much of a tax break were you receiving? And with the future investment, how much of a tax break are you expecting? Depending on that, I will proceed with the further response.
Um, I think with respect to the quantum of tax breaks that is happening, I think this can be still discussed in the further negotiation sessions. The only requirement that we have is that that the scheme that we've enjoyed for the past 5 years must still continue for the next upcoming 5 years or more. Depending upon 5 years, I think at best would be a good time period for us to create this entire environment of ecosystem for far more investment in the same. If that's sufficient, like understands is like if that creates sufficient understanding on part of part of Mr. Bahuguna.
Mr. Leo, I do understand that you've put across on the table that you need a tax concession for the next 5 years. However, what Mr. Bahuguna would like to put across as a counter offer would be that a tax concession for 3 years. As I'm not sure if you really know, but most of the startups, even in Razad, get tax concessions only for a period of 3 years. So, I mean, we cannot go against the law of the land. So, we do believe that 3 years is what we begin with, but in event that it may be extended if possible, we'd look into that. But at the moment I think Bahuguna just has 3 years to offer it, if that would be good for Mr. Leo.
Um, I think that definitely sounds. I think that definitely sounds a bit lucrative offer, but the problem still remains. As long as I agree to the fact that a lot of startups fail, and there is a lot of tax break which goes into unnecessary places and does not get utilized. But the only thing that we are rallying upon here is that we have definitely provided you the benefits of the same, which is to say that your tax breaks can definitely manifest into those jobs. Your tax breaks definitely manifest into your economy getting stabilized and things along the similar lines. The rest assured that we can talk about is that we assure you that the incentives will flow from us as we have already performed for the past 5 years. And we still think that to create far more stability, we need a 5-year tax breaks, even if you want to extend it for 6 years, depending upon if the law says 3 years at a time. I think that's dependent upon Mr. Bahuguna to decide. But the only reason that we're wanting to do so is that the more tax break we get, the more incubated we feel, the larger we are able to create the financial incentives for individuals to invest in it, for these individuals, for the local system, that ecosystem that we have created of users in it to grow and to expand their own potential. I think this is going to create a far better, like mutually beneficial situation for both of us. If
I
that's acceptable on
Yeah.
Mr. Please.
I
Before
do
the
believe that my client does have a trade-off that he'd like to put forward in the table. Mr. Bahuguna, if you can just go ahead with
Yes,
that.
with respect to the tax breaks, I believe since you're making such an investment and we have already seen how well your investment has performed in the past, it is not an issue with us to proceed with a 5-year tax break. But the reason that Mrs. Council has already stated, the 3 years is as per the law, so I can't really go beyond the law and promise 5 years. But on paper, it would be 3 years, but you can be rest assured that there would be a second renewal. That is a clause we can add into the contract itself. And but considering that we are giving, I mean, I understand you're going to invest in our country and we are going to give you tax breaks for the same, but there are certain trade-offs that we would also like. One question was with respect to whether you're looking, I mean, previously I was trying to say that we were trying to set up a digital Rasad and a make in Rasad scheme. So are you willing to have Rasadian investors in your company? Is the first question that I have. And second, again, I'm sorry that we are going back in circles to the server, but after this point, I would also like to discuss the data localization in detail.
Indeed. With respect to that, I think let's make it very clear. When it comes to make in Razad scheme, we are completely okay with it. But as long as it does not interpret into us floating some equity and there have been certain stakes being acquired by the Razadian individuals in our company, I think like this is absolutely necessary for a company to function smoothly, to have this protection for the next 10 years, 15 years, so that we can create certain amount of stability within our company and then open our investments. I think this is something is a lot like has to be still in contingency with what the board desires is necessary and important, and then we can reach to a conclusion of it. I don't think that we can definitely say that equity will be floated, but what we can definitely say is that if there are certain startups that Razards wants us as a company to fund, we are definitely on board with it, and we like more than happy to be funding with Razardian, startups and entrepreneurship. If Radham has something
To
to say.
that, adding to my client's proposal with respect to that and addressing the law aspect of it, because of which I am here, I believe the council must know this as well, that the shareholders, approval is also needed for floating the equity of the same. So we would want to, go back to our shareholders, discuss about the same. However, right now we are not, in a landscape where we can, dilute our equity and invite other members to other investors to invest in our company. However, in the longer run, maybe, depending on the board of directors and depending on the shareholders agreement, we might, open up our equity for certain amount of stake. However, this is very, very contingent and in a very long run, right? You should understand.
So adding on to that, I am glad. I actually like the proposal of DataFest investing in other Asadian startups. I believe that is also a good trade-off with respect to my proposal. I mean, the counter offer seems quite good in my this thing. So I believe that this investment will be in addition to the investment that you had previously proposed.
This is something that the company will say that we'll strive to do towards the end. The investment will flow either ways, and whatever investment we find during the time, we can still engage in doing so. As I have said earlier, with the division of the investment, we can still discuss in later session. The reason is that we're trying to solidify here in this entire negotiation is this investment will come about. But at the same
sorry to interrupt you, but can you give me a rough figure of how much you're willing to invest? I might have missed it in the previous conversation.
Right. So the investment, rest assured, is something which is going to be our largest investment that we have done so far within Razard. But the accounts of the same cannot be solidified right now, since we are really going through the pandemic. We are not steadily aware of how much we are capable of doing so. But we can rest assure you, if the ban is lifted immediately, the idea of the investment will flow absolutely immediately as we can, as immediately as we can.
I'm asking for an estimate figure so that I can go back to my other cabinet ministers and prime minister and discuss this with them.
Right. So I think if the council is okay with agreeing that investment will flow, then I think we can definitely send you a file as soon as you reach the government. I think this can be done in less than 24 hours. This just needs a mere consultation outside this negotiation room with my accountants and individuals who audit my account.
I think I can just interrupt and just let you know at this point that my client here had actually put across on the table here that it's a trade-off. If the extra 2 years is being granted for the tax exemption, there were two limbs to it. However, you actually addressed just one of it, which was the fact of the investments, and you said you would give us a figure at a later point, even though we actually requested only for an estimate. The second point being the relocation of the servers, because I remember Mr. Rhythm telling us that it would take time to relocate the servers. So within 3 years is more than enough, I think, to relocate the servers. And when you are requesting for us to lift the ban immediately, I think even a request can be made from the government's side to actually speed up the process and shift the servers as soon as possible and not wait for a longer run. So this is a trade-off that we also seek, because if we are giving you the advantage of reaping the benefits of having tax concessions for an extra 2 years, we don't see any harm in shifting the servers to Razard. However,
if I can address that, if my client could permit me to address the same, I believe.
Please.
Yeah. So I believe the first concern on your part was with respect to the amount of investment that we'll be infusing in. I believe this is not in the both of our interest. I believe this is largely a business decision that a company takes of investment, and a lot of semantics goes into it, and a lot of accounts goes into it. I believe that should be left to my client, Mr. Leo Yin, and I believe he would go back and discuss upon the same, and the amount should be given to you in a very short span of time. Right?
Yes, I've already agreed that it's fine by me that the estimate be given in 24 hours.
I believe the council had a different opinion. That's why I would like to address the same. Going forward.
Stood.
Yeah. If I can address your second concern with respect to data localization, if you may permit me to.
Clarify before you move on and jump on to a next point. If you could just listen for a minute. Thank you. I was just saying that where we expected a trade-off, where you have denied providing the estimates and other, you've not given an assurance that you would invest a certain amount, right? Because Mr. Leo said that he has to look back and decide upon that. So we don't know, because you have to consult your shareholders or whatever before taking a call as to how much you're going to invest. Having said that, what we were requesting you is to move your servers in the meanwhile and use that as a trade-off. So that
if you can,
just a second,
there's this one.
If I could.
Go ahead.
Right. Let's make it very clear at this moment, right? We're okay with giving a huge amount of investment. This is probably going to be the largest that we have ever done. This is a word that I give right here, and this is what my company backs on. So this is done and dusted with. So there is no ambiguity with the investment coming in or not coming in. The investment is coming in. What has to be decided is the quantum. And with respect to quantum, we have said that we just need 24 hours, and Mr. Bahuguna has expected that within 24 hours we'll give you a detailed sum. The point is that we will do everything which is on, or this is my word as it comes out. We'll do everything on our favor, on our ability to make the sum as large as we can, introduce those ecosystems in the first place. So I think on this point we are reaching a conclusive situation. But at the same time, with respect to data localization, there is a bit of proposal that we wanted to talk about with respect to how this privacy can be taken place. The problem is that it's just about the servers in the larger run, and which is to say that physical existence of the server is the crux of how this mechanization has to take place. Understand that data is not a zero-sum game. It's not that if you empty it from a barrel, the barrel remains empty. Data is largely a game wherein data can be copied and stored in other locations as well, which is to say that to a certain extent, what we can propose to you as an alternative offer to settle down on this data localization plan is this. We think that the local immediate data that we reduce, this local immediate data that we collect is in the longer run, we are going to, give it directly to the government. As soon as it gets copied, the local data still, forms a copy and gets submitted to the government. In the long run, the servers still remain in the country of Singapore to a certain extent. I think if Council Rhythm has to explain this, I think he can do it in better manner.
Yeah. If I can explain the semantics of what, go forward, Miss Council, if you have something to add to this.
No, Mr. Leo, I don't know if I was wrong in hearing you. Did you actually just say that this data can be copied and stored in other locations? Did I hear you right? Yeah. Did you just make that statement right now? Because as far as what I heard, I felt like you just said you can copy the data from the server and store it in other locations. And it brings us to the privacy issue yet again. If data is being copied and stored in other locations and it can be moved, I mean, it's a matter of concern. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Right. So just to address this thing in the last, easiest possible manner in the same thing. The reason I was addressing the nature of data in itself is to tell you how technology works. We're not saying at any point in time, we'll copy this data. We're saying that data moving can do the same. If me saying that data can be copied directly says that privacy will be infringed, I think that's a direct logical jump which is happening here. We think that what we're trying to address in this immediate sense is that these amount of discussions can come about if there is certain amount of need on the government to realize where this data is being, what data is being collected in general and how it is being utilized. At the same time, what we're still trying to address and make a point in this place is the larger problems arise when you have the physical data in a specific place. We think that to a certain extent, we are okay with arriving to a conclusion as to how this will get mechanized. I think Rhythm will explain to you later on the same paths, but rest assured, this has to be made clear that the reason why I explained the nature of technology was not to say that privacy is being violated, but rather to say how data works. Rhythm, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Yin. I believe there has been some sort of miscommunication on part of Yin to the council and Mr. Bahuguna. I believe there has been some mishearing as well on the part of council. I believe what Mr. Yin wanted to say as to how data worked in actuality. So what major developing nations and major developed nations are doing today are that they are asking the companies to create a copy of their data in the local server in the country, right, where the where the data is being taken from. However, the main data will go to Singapore and the data processing will be held there. So what we are also proposing in that, in the longer run, what we can do is we can establish a copy of the data server in the country. However, the main data processing and data storage will be done in Singapore. That's the best we can offer you here. Thank you.
With respect to that, just to conclude my offer in the first place, I'm really sorry if something went out of place. With respect to the same, when it talks about directly copying of data, let me make it very clear. And I think that there have been certain amount of miscommunication of information. Every country that gets the same data gets the data of individuals who reside within those territorial boundaries. This does not imply the idea that we are still going ahead and violating privacy of every other individual. The company which needs the data of its own citizens can do so by creating a copy. This way, this allows us to engage in a check mechanism that at a point in time when there are certain alarming situations, we can act upon it and do certain conclude certain benefits out of the same. At the same time, what I think this solution looks like, it may not be the best solution that you have thought in mind, but I think that this is the most efficient solution that we can provide to you. Reason being that GDPR is a direct result of how we understand the world works, which is to say that this narrow boundaries of directly physically moving servers do not need to be done with respect to ensuring privacy in the first place. We think that this is the modern and the standard way of engaging in data localization. And I hope that sounds good enough offered to you if you're okay with it.
Yes. So with regard to the data localization, this was pretty much what I had in mind. I mean, we were hoping that you would shift the servers back to Razad because we were such a huge country and we are looking to build our digital infrastructure, as you might see. And hopefully somewhere in the long run, that might even happen. But with regard to the present data localization, could you give me an estimate years as to when you could copy the servers and create a local server?
I think at this moment, I cannot guarantee that servers will never move. At this moment, if there is a direct, satisfaction on part of the government that it is able to keep track of what is being created and what is being, received on our part, because everything that the individuals will utilize and every information is being.
Mr. Ian, let me clarify. I'm talking about the data localization, not your entire server change, just the copies that you will be providing to us. What is the time frame for that?
All right. Oh, yeah, definitely. I think we can definitely move on to like sending the copies within next 1 year. This is, I think, with respect to the best capacities and technological advancements which are happening. If sooner is possible, we are okay with it. I think like this is something that will help us to shift the arrangements to those places. I think arrangements are still something which can be decided in later negotiations, later negotiation sessions. And if there are any more questions regarding this policy, or we can move ahead.
Also, to add one last thing, if Mr. Baguna would allow me, I believe the part where the copies will be generated and supplied and stored in the country, I believe it is very important to note and very important to clarify again that the servers will never be be moved actually, but the copies will be stored in the country, right? I believe we are on the same page there, because otherwise we would not want a miscommunication or misclarification.
Yes,
on the
definitely.
part that,
I'm the Minister of Information and Technology. I think I understand how this works.
Certainly.
Thank you.
So, given that, I understand the reason the time frame of 1 year has come into place, but since we are planning to lift the ban in a few days, and there has to be some leeway that we also get as a government with regard to this. So, if possible, I mean, I have already stated that you will try your level best to ensure that it is a shorter time frame. But if possible, we would like you to look at a period of 6 months to doing same. I'm not asking for any guarantees at the moment. We can definitely negotiate this at a later point, since you have already considered localizing the data. And I think now my council can quickly summarize everything that has been agreed on this stage. And we sorry, 1 second. And also it is necessary that whatever, I mean, we have already mentioned this in the start, whatever is discussed in this negotiation remains confidential. And if there ever is a public statement, which will come only after all our negotiations are done, then I would like to have a control over how the joint statement is put out there, so that there is no miscommunication, no misunderstandings that goes out.
Indeed. So, Rhythm, you're muted.
Yeah. Can I answer one of the questions that is with respect to the joint statement, because we were also wondering if if the ban is lifted, we would want a joint statement coming out from the government as well as Mr. Yin's side and DataFest side, so that the reinstatement of trust is being publicized upon and broadcasted upon, because previously when we had banned, we had suffered a huge amount of public image crash, wherein a lot of individuals started distrusting us. However, if Mr. Bahuguna and the government as a whole could come about and with Mr. Yin and in public clarify that we have reinstated our relationship with Mr. Bahuguna, with Mr. Yin and DataFest Limited, we would go forward with that. If my client has certain to add, yeah.
Right. With respect to the nature of the the release of the statement we're talking about, there is one minute consideration that I wanted to add. I think that ever since this ban has come into place, and specifically given the timing of this ban, there has been certain amount of miscommunication as to how individuals perceive this action to be. Individuals are not perceiving this action to be an act or the act of government on privacy violations. They think that this is something that we are selling our application as a Trojan horse for Alanian government. We think that these kinds of political affiliations is something that the company seeks to stand aloof from, and we hope that the government clarifies in the joint statement that the ban was made strictly with respect to the privacy definition problems that the government thought it to be.
As I said previously, the joint statement will be made in consideration. Maybe we can have a session just to draft the joint statement. So at that time, we will definitely put in a clause as you have stated.
Right.
Now, Council, could you please?
Conclude.
Yeah. Thank you for that. If I may conclude on behalf of my client, and then you can chip in and add any other clarifications that you have on your hand. This is a path-breaking deal that we've reached here and agreed upon, and this negotiation is one of the most fruitful sessions that we could have gotten into in the first place. The first thing that we agreed upon is with respect to the investigation body and the committee that will be formed, which will include one member from an independent nation, and the same committee will be investigating quarterly for 1 year that we've agreed upon, and we will be sending the data or the use of data that has been done by advertising and other companies, right? That is the first trade-off that we've given in response to the immediate lifting of the ban, right? Second,
I just want to add some intricacies to it. I think someone's unmuted. I just want to add some intricacies to it that we discussed with respect to the appointment of the committee and stuff. I just want to relay the 3 pointers that I had brought down before as well. First one was that we'd oversee the operations of DataFest with respect to the servers containing the data of the Razari citizens. The second is we'll take a detailed report, a quarterly report initially for almost a period of 1 year. Then we'd look at it and then we'd proceed whether we'd go at either half-yearly reports or annually reports. And then finally,
I believe there's a miscommunication on that part. We'd expressly taken a word from Mr. Bahuguna that this is only the arrangement is only for 1 year, and after that this will not exist anymore. I believe Mr. Yin is on the same page with me on that.
I'm sorry.
Indeed. For the first year.
And also with respect to the same
performance, we would shift either half-yearly or annually. But in case things work out like Mr. Bahuguna put forward, it would be an annual report. But all that would depend on what happens in the quarterly reports. That's what I think Mr. Bahuguna also put forward.
Indeed.
And I'm glad that
getting into the point of half-yearly was something that made us go a bit susceptible on your end. Right, so annually is the only we're outcome that we're looking for, depending of course on the quarterly report that comes through.
On whatever happens in the quarterly reports, I think that was clearly put out.
Yes, definitely.
That's why I mentioned that in case the quarterly report results aren't good enough, then we would follow the half-yearly system and not the annual system. So it's all contingent on that. I'm glad that you clarified it and there's no further misunderstanding on this ground as yet. So moving to the third ground, which is the investigatory powers in case of misuse of the servers, if it's established prima facie. And again, I just want to establish that whatever is being spoken about here, it must be really confidential. And even with the public statement that Mr. Bahuguna has accepted to give, I think it will be mutual. And other than that, you have accepted to add re-employ and reinstate the workers.
Just one thing.
Just a minute, I'll be done, and then Mr. Rhythm could. Yeah.
My client wanted to say something with respect to the clarification. Just give him a stage.
Just one thing. Just one thing. I think we also agreed that there will be an independent organization or a country coming in with respect to that. I think Mr. Bahuguna accepted to the same. Just wanted to clarify this because I didn't hear it in the concluding remarks. Indeed. Please continue.
Yeah, going forward with the second, if you have summarized the first limb of the agreement that we have reached, can I please, summarize the second limb of the agreement that we reached with respect to the investment that will flow in the country, right? I believe we have agreed on the fact that the investments will come about in the country, and one of the largest amount of sums of investment. However, we have not given you a quantum to that, and that will be shortly supplied to you. However,
within 24 hours.
The trade-off, what?
Within 24 hours, the details have to reach my
24 hours, definitely.
Yeah, 24 hours, indeed.
The second trade-off that you've given us as a government is the tax breaks that you've promised for 6 years, 5 years, if I'm not wrong.
3 years and then a renewal.
Yes,
indeed.
yes. But
a word on renewal.
Total 5 years, right? That is what I was clarifying, Mr. Bahuguna, right? And also, we've going forward, we've also agreed on investing in startups in the Rizardian country, and investing a lot of infusing a lot of money in the economy as a whole. And also going forward, we've also agreed on the fact that there will be mutual cooperation between and the business ombudsman that we have demanded from, and that has been agreed from on the side of Ms. Bahuguna. This has been an extremely fruitful session. I would like to thank Mr. Bahuguna as well as the council.
You have missed quite a few points that we actually accepted on the table today.
Please do mention them.
Reinstating the workers who have been previously laid off by Fest, and also the wages to be paid fully for those who have been just paid 50% of the wages. Additionally, with respect to the servers, I think the copied part of it would be tried to be given at the earliest and a maximum duration of a year. On behalf of my client, I would also like to thank Mr. Leo and his counsel for being accommodative. I do realize that there was a lot of tensions throughout the session. I think that's because of the magnitude of issue that was involved as a government was involved. But I do believe that this has been an effective process, and maybe a few things that have been left out could be discussed in the next session. I request the council if we could just sign a memorandum of understanding and enter into it with respect to whatever we have accepted.
Certainly. I would be
certainly. I believe both the parties.
Yeah.
I believe both the parties will definitely look into it, and I would first of all, use congratulations to both the parties for having such a fruitful and efficient session throughout. And I'm very happy that the negotiations went forward very smoothly, and we were able to arrive at some concrete conclusions, which I think both the parties will carry forward in the future negotiations from now. And I think in the future sessions, we will be able to bring this dispute to a close. And I hope to see both the parties in the future negotiations. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you
very
much,
moderator.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.